Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast. Today, we're talking about creating family heirloom photography. So let's get into it.
Welcome to the Beginner Photography Podcast, a weekly podcast for those who believe that moments matter most and that a beautiful photo is more than just a sum of its settings. A show for those who want to do more with the gear they have to take better photos today. And now, your host, Raymond Hatfield.
Welcome back to this episode of the Beginner Photography Podcast. I am your host, Raymond Hatfield, and today we got some great stuff for you that I'm really excited to get into. But first, let me tell you about my week. It has been a crazy week over here. We get this a few weeks ago. We started to notice that our floor was getting a little warmer than it normally was, especially for the winter. It was quite strange. What we found out was we had a slab leak. So we had a water pipe that had broke under our house and was just letting out tons of hot water, all of our hot water, which was of course warming our slab, making our toes nice and warm. Now, while this was nice to have a warm kitchen floor in the morning, it was obviously, bad for the environment. We were losing tons of water and, bad just all around. So we had to get that fixed. This guy came in with a jackhammer to break through our slab to try to find this thing, and it was a whole wreck. But this whole process took several days, and as you can imagine, a lot of time. But we finally got it fixed. We have more warm water than we had before, but unfortunately, our toes are cold in the kitchen in the morning. So, you win some and you lose some. But on top of all of that, I also launched my newest course called Lightroom 101 last week, and the response has been great. It's been more than I really expected. I've learned so many myths about Lightroom out there that are just really stopping so many photographers just like you from creating incredible images. And myths about Lightroom, it's only for professionals, or you can't start editing your photos until, you get it perfect in camera, or have a top of the line, new camera body, or that you don't need Lightroom if you prefer a natural look. And that has been one of the biggest things that has kind of caught me off guard, because when you think about it, everybody wants a natural look, right? Every single person wants their photos to look quote-unquote natural. It's just that we're all unique and see the world just a little bit differently. And what's natural to me doesn't look natural to you. But it's not about looking natural. Photos that come straight out of camera don't look natural. It's learning to edit is the ability to show the world how you see natural. So it's that on top of the incredible powers of keeping your ever-growing photo collection of images just meticulously organized, which really makes Lightroom the industry standard when it comes to editing and managing your photos. So in my new course, Lightroom 101, I take you from import to export and show you how to create a powerful photo editing workflow, just so that you can spend less time really wondering what sliders do what, and spend more time shooting what it is that you love. So on top of that, this core course, to make the whole deal sweeter, I include 6 bonuses worth $632 that you have to see to believe. So anyway, if you want to finally master Lightroom and create images that are incredible, I have a link to the course in the show notes of this episode that has a code attached to knock $50 off of the price. And of course, there's a full 30-day money-back guarantee. So just head over to learn.beginnerphotographypodcast.com to find the new course Lightroom 101, or click the link in the show notes for more. And enrollment closes this Thursday, March 5th. If you're listening when this episode goes live, enrollment closes March 5th at midnight. So if you want to learn how to use Lightroom, sign up for it now while it's still fresh in your mind. So today I talked to Luci Dumas. Luci is a photographer from San Diego who's been shooting families for 30 years. She is just a wealth of knowledge and inspiration. You're really going to get a ton out of this interview, and you're also going to get one of the best tips to photographing kids that I have ever heard. It's the exact opposite approach of what I would take in this situation. You're going to have to hear it to believe it. And as always, I also cut a portion of the interview out that is related to making money with your camera and save it just for premium members. So this week, premium members are in for a treat because they're going to learn how to double your income with one small tweak. I'm serious. How Luci manages working and having clients come in and out of her home. How becoming your client's trusted advisor will transform your business. So like I said, there's a ton of extra information in this one. So if you want to hear these money-making tips from today's guest, Luci, and tips from past guests, then become a premium member by heading over to beginnerphotographypodcast.com and click that premium membership button at the top of the page. So with that, let's get into this interview with Luci Dumas. Today's guest has always been crazy about kids, which is good because she's been photographing them for more than 30 years. She's a certified master photographer through the BPP and has won numerous top awards in local and national competitions for her beautiful photographs. Recently, she has started sharing all of her years of experience as the host of the Profitable Photographer podcast, Luci Dumas. Luci, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Raymond. I'm so excited. It was so great to meet you in person at the PPA Expo, and now we get to have a chat. So I love
it. A few weeks ago, well, technically yesterday, but a few weeks ago, when people are listening to this in the weird time zone of podcasts, when I released that episode, I said how much fun it was just going out and actually meeting people who I have, oftentimes as a photographer, we're stuck behind a camera. We're stuck behind the computer, and we don't really get to go out and meet people like we do as you would at like a traditional, 9-to-5 day job or something like that. And going to a convention was something that I had never experienced before. I didn't know what to expect. It was absolutely incredible. And being able to meet all of the fantastic people, including you, was just a treat. So again, I'm super excited to talk to you today. But like I mentioned in the intro, you've been photographing for decades.
38 years this month.
38 years this month. That's
Full
fantastic.
Time. No other job, no rich husband, never won the lottery, no inheritance.
All on your own. So then why don't you go ahead and just let us know how did you get started in photography in the first place?
Well, like a lot of people, I've always been an artist at heart. And as a preteen, I got a camera that actually, the film was, I don't know what the millimeter was, but it was a pretty nice, big, black and white size. Do you know what I'm talking about? It was like a Brownie Hawkeye or something.
Yeah.
Before they started shrinking. So I always had a camera, and I didn't photograph a lot because affording the film and the processing was difficult. And then I was on a date with, it was an out-of-town boyfriend, and we met halfway between, and he bought a Canon AE1 when I was in my 20s. And I helped him figure out how to load the film, and a few images that I took on his camera versus my, little cheapy thing, it just blew my mind.
Wow.
And I realized I could afford a camera, and I probably could figure out how to use it. I was always intimidated by the technology, but when they came out with auto, ability to set the shutter speed, and it picked the aperture, so I didn't have to learn everything right at first. It just changed everything. And I had another little business in the airport in San Diego. The recession hit, and my contract was canceled. And that, like the magic 8-ball, one of the things says everything
all signs
point
to
yes.
yes.
All
right.
signs point to yes. I kept, what am I going to do now? And it was a man's world at the time, but I didn't let that stop me. And just went for it, and a step at a time, I figured out how to make this work. And so I haven't had what I call a real job, um, you know, in a whole bunch of years. So
I
I
bet a
love
lot of
it.
people listening are envious of that and the ability to go off and do something like that. So before we get into the business that you had started and photographing children and families and weddings, when you first picked up that camera, you said that you got that AE1, you started taking photos, and you were just blown away by how much better the quality was.
Mhm.
Was there anything that you would say that you struggled with most when it came to the technical side of photography?
Um, just understanding all the numbers and the concepts. Before we started this recording, I shared that flash photography is still kind of my nemesis. Luckily, when I was doing weddings, the there there's a Vivitar 285 where all I had to understand was full power, half power, quarter, and then
Yes.
dial in the purple, blue, red, yellow. And because film is forgiving,
Mhm.
I just made sure I had enough light, but not too much. But some of the little like guide numbers and sometimes mixing flash or off camera flash, um, those little things
Mhm.
are just not my nature. And I learned them. Actually, I was surprised at how much of a technical brain I do have as this unfolded and I began to learn. Um,
Really? So, how
yeah,
would you say that you kind of overcame that? Was it just purely through practice?
it's necessity.
Hmm.
You know, if I'm going to make a living at this, I've got to learn my craft. I've got to learn my equipment.
I
So,
think today we're at this point to where many people would say, "Well, why do I even need to know Flash? Like, what's the point?" Did you have an option back then? Why if you weren't comfortable with it, why pursue that? I guess is my question.
so in the wedding world, you have to have a flash.
Hmm.
Uh, when I started, the film we used was ISO 100.
Oh, very slow.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And then they came up with decent 400. And so on a tripod at a ceremony, I could do F4 at 4
Hmm.
to get the ceremony. But, you can't take the whole wedding party outside in open shade to get family groups and all that. So it's absolutely necessary
Hmm.
in that world. As I built my photography business, I mean my baby children's portrait business, because I did weddings for 12 years primarily. I believe in the importance of focusing in one area because you grow faster and you gain more reputation, you get more traction. Um, so about 2010 or about 10 years in, then I started growing a children's business and primarily um, focusing on natural light photography, but not because I didn't know what I was doing. And so I went outside and hoped for the best.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Of course,
I'm a
yes.
natural light photographer, but because I loved the quality and I loved the simplicity of discovering how to find beautiful light. That's um, one of my fortes, something I love to teach people. I have a fun little class where I photographed my Barbie in, to illustrate. And it was amazing how um, she looked like she'd had a really rough night in bad light and looked like my new best friend in good light. And and my Barbie was an old one where she had these shifty eyes where she's like looking off instead of looking right at you. So yeah, so I just love it. I love finding the light, and it was a lot of your questions of how did I learn this. I've always been involved in the Professional Photographers of America. Um, Go to week-long classes every year. Probably been to 20 in my career, where I spent a week with a small group and one photographer, and one of them opened my eyes up. His name is passing me by. He's from Canada, um, but I learned to see in a way that I hadn't before. And so at that point, then I just saw light everywhere. Like one of my challenges with video interviews with anybody is that I'm always looking at the light. I see that bright light behind you. I see the light on your face. If I look at me, I think, are we lit right? So it's like this noise in the head that never goes away, but it's great.
What do you think it was that you learned that kind of gave you that aha moment?
Say again?
What do you think it was that you learned that gave you that aha moment? You said during that course, you walked away now being able to see the light.
Yes.
Why do you think that was?
So there's two things that, well, one of the biggies that I love to share with people is that the brightest part of a photograph becomes the subject. So I was including a lot of sky in things. And then when I looked at my work after this class, I was like, oh, my eye is taken away from the person. And so from that point, I remember doing a wedding shortly after the class, and I would set my tripod, I would do my composition, I'd get the people in place, then I'd look through the lens and realize, oh my gosh, I've got too much sky. So then I'd move forward, because that was with Hasselblad's, they were fixed lenses. So that was a biggie. And there just was something about this whole week of him pointing out the light and how to find it, that it's like the synapses in the brain, the little pathways grew to a point where now I can't unsee light as it falls.
Yeah. Having that full week dedicated to learning just that one thing, I could see how that would be extremely helpful.
I was on vacation. Just have to tell you this little story. I was on vacation. My boyfriend and I were driving through kind of farm country in Utah, east of Salt Lake City, and later in the evening, and I go, oh my gosh, and he's like, what? Look at the light on those cows. So, because then I could see that subtlety of the evening light and how it created texture, and I'll never forget the light on those cows.
Yeah, that's a weird thing, right? Something that only photographers would see. Somebody who can see that light.
Yes. But once I get, because I'm always teaching people whether they want it or not. and so people around me, I love to help them see the light. One of the things I like about I'm on my iMac, and it's got a nice big bright screen, so I've got some nice directional light here, whereas if I'm in my other computer in my chair, it's a whole different light pattern. So yes, I'm always
looking for a good direction.
Yeah, I'm always seeing it.
I love that. So then tell me about how this business of photographing. So, okay, let me start back over. You lost your job at the airport, right?
Yeah.
So you knew that you had to make money somehow. Was it first weddings that you decided, I'm going to jump into this?
So I always loved kids, and I always loved weddings. I cry at cartoon weddings. When I was 5, my dad, who was a minister, photographed the richest person in our church. It was not a very rich church, but this one family. And I'll never forget the scene with the candles and the beautiful dress. And there's a picture they gave my parents of me flying through the crowd with the bride and groom behind me. And you can see the joy on my face. And then kids are my thing. Always had, as a little girl, I always had baby dolls, and I babysat, even when I was way too young. I should not have been babysitting at that age. Baby was crying, and it took me a long time to check the diaper. I never made that mistake again.
Step number 1, yeah.
Yes, check the diaper. Don't try to feed it. But I tried everything. At the beginning, I did some trades with my gym for their ads, and got to do studio work there, and that was fun. I did a little bit of product shot. There was a free newspaper that would hire me. It was a health, it's called Holistic Living News.
Hmm.
So they'd send me on assignments to photograph somebody grounding wheatgrass or mushrooms for macrobiotic restaurants or just different things. And they would pay me for every image that was used as well as on a session. And that put some money in my pocket and helped me. I had a friend who's very photogenic, and for fun, we built a portfolio and did some different things. But then when I began to think about the smart moves, I realized there is built in work with weddings that is the easiest if you like weddings.
Hmm.
That is an easy path to get work and get some bigger money in your pocket without having to learn how to be a master salesperson, which, um, you know, selling is my superpower.
Yes.
um, but so I made the choice to specialize. Now, if somebody came to me and wanted a baby portrait or family portrait, of course, I didn't turn that down. But my marketing, there's no websites at the time, but my brochure, um, how I promoted myself, the classes I took, we're talking about attending conferences. So I would go to all the wedding classes so that I just grew, both in terms of reputation and my own knowledge.
Hmm.
I'd go to bed dreaming about weddings, waking up thinking about weddings. I had an assistant that helped me a lot. And on the way home, we'd always talk about, okay, what worked well with that? What can we improve? How can we handle that problem before it happens?
Hmm.
So all of that focus, I believe so strongly what you focus on expands. And that, so within 3 years, I was like making a full-time living. Actually, sooner than that, but 3 years it was really solid.
Hmm.
And the other thing, I'm a very natural networker. I'm always supporting people. If I like what somebody does, I tell everyone.
Hmm.
And so it was very natural and easy in the wedding industry to get partnered up with other vendors because there are a lot of small businesses.
Yeah.
And when someone's getting married, they need a lot of small businesses. So referring, making friends, and even getting to know who was a good photographer in San Diego and referring them when I'm booked,
Hmm.
then they started referring me back. So, I didn't know that I was doing things, you know, the way I now teach people in my coaching to grow their business, but just as a natural connector, it, and I love communities. I love to form communities. And a lot of that was selfish because I knew if they were using my DJ, my cake baker, my videographer, my florist, the day went so much better.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good feeling, especially as a photographer to go in and know, to have a good idea of how the day is going to go
Yeah.
is always extremely helpful.
Yeah.
So when did the transition come from weddings to primarily children and family?
I realized I was going to hit burnout, which I
Mhm.
did. Honestly, I think I had about 10 years of PTSD afterwards. Weddings are rough, and especially in the film day where it's just the anxiety waiting a week to know if you got it,
Yeah.
if
Oh man.
everything worked.
Oh, I can't imagine.
One time, my Hasselblad, one of the leaves broke in the lens, but I
Oh
didn't
no.
know it.
Uh-huh.
And luckily, I was on a tripod. Uh, well, actually, I don't know if that helped me, but using natural light, and I put it on a tripod. I'd open the shutter because that cuts down on vibration shake,
Hmm.
and then I'd walk, let's say, to the bride, and I'd fluff her hair or something. Well, when the pictures got back, there were streaks of me
Whoa.
in my own photographs. I was not good. It turned out okay, but yeah. Anyway, so it's hard work. It's hard work physically. I was finding that instead of like Sunday was always a recovery day where that adrenaline hangover
Mm-hmm.
and the physicality of it, you know, I kind of felt like mush.
Yeah,
But
I
when
get
I
it. Yeah.
found, as I'm not getting any younger, it would be 2 days before I would feel normal.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized the time's coming. So I just started growing the children's business. I set up a studio in an apartment I have above my garage. I changed my ad in the yellow pages. I changed my marketing materials. I started telling people, if somebody said, "Who are you? What do you do?" I stopped saying I'm a wedding photographer. Started saying I photograph children. They're my, kids are my thing. And luckily, it was a wide open field at the time.
Why is that?
Right.
Nobody else was doing it?
Well, so if you think about it, had been a man's world. About 10 years in is when um, a wave of women started getting into the industry and teaching. Dudes in general are not naturally, not all guys, but especially the men of my generation,
Mm-hmm.
uh, that they didn't strap their babies onto them,
Yes.
and go for walks in the neighborhood, walking the dog like I see I see every day in my
Yeah.
neighborhood. So there were people doing photographs of kids, but they didn't know what to do with newborns. For the most part, it wasn't their passion. There were really only two fine art photographers that specialized in children in San Diego. You know, there were the Olin Mills, there were Sears, but that doesn't count.
Right.
So now where I see a similar opportunity is in pets.
Pets, really?
Yeah,
Hmm.
because it's a specialty that is growing, and there's like now kids are it's harder because in the digital age it's so easy to get a good photograph
Mm-hmm.
and get feedback and get better quickly, and and many more women are in the industry, so it would seem natural to me that they'd photograph their kids and their neighbors, and people say, "Oh, that's great," and then they say, "I'm going to have a business."
Mm-hmm.
With pets, it's just it's more of a niche that hasn't been fully blossomed. And also,
Interesting.
like weddings, there are lots of other vendors that are independently owned that serve the community. So
Oh,
there's
yeah.
networking opportunities.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's something to think about. Let's
Let's see. So
let's
the
go back to
transition,
children, though. Yeah.
so the transition was just, first of all, just telling the world.
Uh-huh.
And at the time I was working on my getting my craftsman and master's degree in PPA. One of the ways that you do that is by speaking. And so the 2 in the morning, I wrote this program out about what it is, things that I know about children that maybe photographers don't. And so the program primarily is the 7 or 8 stages of childhood and what you can do at each stage and what you can't. Like why you can have clothing changes with an 11-month-old and not a 13-month-old.
Why is that?
It's brain development.
Mm-hmm.
Is right about 12 months when they are getting, strong enough to walk. There's something in the brain, and I had a brain scientist tell me what it was. I don't remember, but there's something grows that is about independence and self identification. And to me, that's when the terrible twos start.
Mm-hmm.
Is it about 13, 14 months? Because it's their job now to start to say no and to resist. So
Gotcha.
yeah, it's
Yeah, that's a
brain.
great tip.
And then the other part of the program is about the basic needs and how to address them in advance and during a session. For example, they need to be comfortable. They need to be rested. They need to be healthy. Uh, if it's going badly, they might be scared, or they might be bored, or they might be two.
They might
They
just be
might
two
be,
years
they
old.
just might be two. A couple others, healthy, sad, scared. Did I say that? Um, anyway, so I created this program and I started speaking about children. And when I entered print competition, I entered primarily children's photography, both in my local, state, and national organizations. So, uh, and it just grew.
It just grew from
And
there. So tell me about some of those early struggles, because I know for me, having two children, whenever I point the camera at them, they're kind of used to the camera because I always have a camera with me.
mhm.
But there's still this self-awareness that they get whenever the camera's pointed at them. So when it comes to kids, and I guess specifically posing children, was that the hardest hurdle to overcome when transitioning from weddings to working with children? You're shaking
No,
your head no. No.
no.
What was the biggest hurdle to overcome?
So the reason it's not a hurdle is because kids are my thing. And they know, like, they feel the love, they feel the acceptance right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I work on a tripod as much as possible. So um, I'm making faces at them. I'm having a relationship. I don't have a big black something, or, a phone in front of my face. They're seeing my face and responding. And I just seem to have infinite patience. Now, that being said, my neighbor kids, who are like my kids, really hard to photograph them because, like you said, it's just me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, when they be like, hey, let's go in your studio, take our picture, I wouldn't have made sure I had a nap. I wouldn't have my equipment in order. You know, like all the things I do to prepare for a paid session,
Mm-hmm.
we hadn't done that. And I'd find myself, no, don't do it that way. And then I'd be like, whoa, I would never say that to a client's
Of course.
child.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. But back to hurdles.
Or
Or
you know what? Let's just talk about posing. I think that's one thing that a lot of people struggle with when it comes to kids, because I feel like right now there's really two schools of thought when it comes to photographing children. There is the traditional posed, have them in like perfect controlled lighting, have the scene set, camera on a tripod. There's that. But then
mhm.
there's also just like the lifestyle stuff, which is, hey, cameras are good enough with autofocus. I'll just shoot them as they play, and then that will be that, right? Those are two very different things. You specialize obviously in the pose portraiture of children. You're kind of shaking
Yeah.
your head, yes and no.
Yes and no. When
Okay.
I do a session, um, I do both.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do is I control the light, whether it's in the studio where I move the lights so that when they're just doing what they're doing, the lighting's good.
Mm-hmm.
Or if we're outdoors, I don't just randomly chase them around areas where the light stinks. Um, I I'll get them in, let's say, sitting on a bench together or something, and I see the light is good, and I also am able to get them positioned so that when they do whatever they do, uh, it's good angles.
What does that mean? What does that mean? Get them positioned so that when they do whatever it is that they're going to do.
Okay, so if I'm going to do sort of a lifestyle, let's say it's in a home.
Mm-hmm.
If we were going to say, oh, um, let's have them reading books together. So I'd find a place where the light was nice, and I'd position the book, and then let them mess around in that target rich environment in terms
Gotcha.
of the scene itself and the lighting. Or, oh, let's have them eating breakfast. Well, I'd make sure that I'm positioned in their position so there's nice light and there's nice background
Mm-hmm.
while they're eating breakfast. um, Also, I'm all about making the sale. I'm an in-person sales kind of gal.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that when someone's going to put their dollars down for something, they, even those candid type photographs, and some are truly candid, they still want to be able to see their face. They still want their body parts to be, placed in good things. They don't want, hands in strange, like the composition still needs to be there for them to
Sure.
buy it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they mostly buy ones where they can see nice, evocative, whether it's a smile or a tender moment where they can see the expression and experience that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of the drawbacks for people who do, let's say, photograph and deliver, I'm not sure if shoot and burn is now considered, proper, or it's offensive. Do you know what I'm talking
Oh,
about?
yeah, yeah. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay. So one of the downsides with shoot and burn is that you don't know what they would actually buy
Mm-hmm.
if that was their choice. So you don't grow in terms of providing for your clients more and more images that they are thrilled with. Like, they'll be thrilled overall, but you don't know if you're wasting your time, let's say at a wedding, photographing the fork.
Yeah.
But if you're selling them photographs for an album, you'll see which pictures you're doing that are highly successful, which
Mm-hmm.
poses, which feeling. So that being said, having sold, a quadrillion zillion photographs and sat with clients to see what makes their hearts explode from joy, I know, what people are going to love.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does. It does. And
Yeah.
that has changed the way or I guess how much candid versus how much posed photos
Right.
that you do. So when it
Right.
comes to those post photos, what are the ones that people are putting their dollars down for?
Um, it really comes down to that the expression says something.
Mm-hmm.
I see so many pictures where people get everything in place. The design is good, the composition, the lighting, kids are dressed great, um, and then they're dead in the eyes,
Mm-hmm.
or not just dead in the eyes, but you know that it's what I consider the before the moment photograph, rather than that moment that you want to look at over and over and over again. Like, the reason Mona Lisa is so evocative is there is something in those 50 muscles in the face that the painter has captured, that as humans we read as feeling. And with her, it's an intriguing feeling because it's not exactly clear what
Yes.
she's feeling. So we can tell lots of different stories. I mean, that's why I encourage, like, people always want smiles, but not cheese. That's the other reason I like little kids,
Yeah.
because they're pre-cheese.
Pre-cheese.
Never said that before, but,
That's
or
good.
it's easier for me to entertain them and get their attention and get them, like you're listening to me right now. And so your muscles in your face are responding and your eyes are sparkling and attentive, and you know those moments are, well, so I listened to a program on master artists. One of them was David and the other was Bernini.
Okay.
That It was a PBS show, and both of them did, did people, uh, and they were talking about what makes a successful photograph of a person, and especially like busts. If you've seen, you know, uh, marble busts
Of
of
heads. Yep.
people, is that the expression looks like either they just said something or they're just about to.
Mm.
I
I've never
know,
thought
isn't
about it
that?
that. Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. I've always just imagined somebody trying to stay as still as possible while somebody scopes out that marble. But uh, when it's put that way, that makes it seem a lot more interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And so, let's see, what was your question back?
We're talking about the poses of kids that it
Oh,
is that you enjoy, that you like,
so
that sell.
every age I have different poses that I know will work.
Hmm.
So if we're talking about babies, one of
Hmm.
the mistakes I see um, is they park a baby shoulder straight to the camera and feet out in front of them. So look how big my hands look.
Yeah,
And they
compared to
kind
your
of look like flippers.
hand.
And especially they'll be like this.
Hmm.
So if you just turn that kid, bend their leg in when, and this is the sit and stay age, is what I call it,
Hmm.
which is 7 to 10, 11 months, where sure, they're going to tip over, they're going to crawl away, but for a little bit or in the right chair, they'll sit. So the shoulders are turned and the face is to the camera. Um, it's a much more pleasing photograph than when they're just, legs out in front of
Spread
them so
towards the
they don't
camera.
fall over.
Hmm.
So it's those little subtle posing opportunities that I look for. Um, if it's a toddler, I'm looking for either a way to elevate them
Hmm.
so that they don't run away, or one of my tricks is to have them, if we're outside, um, try to push over a wall or a tree so they get sideways, their hands are fixed somewhere. We're telling them to push, and then I get their attention. So I get an expression, I
Yeah.
get their face, their body is in a good position. So I have all these tricks.
Yeah, that's a good one right there. I've always wondered how, because it seems like I would never ever convince my 3 year old to
You
just,
won't.
put your hands on a tree and like look like you're really posing. But yeah, push the tree over. Push the tree
Yeah.
over. Oh, and by the way, just look at me real quick. Okay, perfect. Got
Yeah.
it.
Well, no, I don't say, look at me. So that's
You
the other
just
thing
wait
with
till
a
they do.
toddler. The other thing with a toddler, no.
Hmm.
The other thing with a toddler is at this stage of development, they are learning independence. And so if they know what I want and they are practicing saying no that day,
Hmm.
I won't get anything. They'll never do what I want. So we never say, go stand here, look
Hmm.
at me, do this, smile. I have to earn it. So get them in place, push, push, push. And then I make a noise or I squeak or I do something that gets their attention.
Hmm.
I don't say, look over here, smile.
Right, but then at that moment,
It's like,
that's a decisive moment.
yay! Oh, where's the ball? Oh, there's a duck on my head. Something to get
Yeah,
them looking.
and that works. That works.
And
That's
the
great.
other part that I know a lot of people will resonate with in photographing kids, and this is fun to talk about this because a lot of my interviews we talk about making money,
Hmm.
and that is certainly dear to my heart. But so is how to be effective photographing, and especially kids. So the other part that has to be handled is the parents. And I tell them, now I might say, I'm the captain now. But basically, I let them know I'm like now the parent,
Hmm.
and I need to establish a relationship with your kids, get them to respond to me. So please don't repeat what I say because they'll wait to do what I want until you say it.
Hmm.
And you won't say it at the moment I need it. Sometimes, if there's parents that are being too, let's say, attentive, I have them turn backwards
Oh, wow.
so they can't even see. When it's a group, and if you look at, I know you're going to have show notes and you're going to have pictures.
Hmm.
So there's one, if you decide to put it in, it's a big family group with lots of little kids. The hardest part in a group that has small children is to get the parents to keep their attention on me
Yeah.
with a nice expression
Hmm.
and not to look at the child,
To make sure that they're looking.
right, and doing what they're supposed to.
Inadvertently ruining the photos themselves and
Right.
not the kids. Yeah.
Right. Now with digital, now I can do head swaps. And by the way, one of the reasons I work on a tripod, especially with groups, is it makes head swaps
Super
so
easy.
easy
Yeah.
because you just open in layers in Photoshop, stack up everything, and then they all line up, and you just do masks and you paint in the expressions you want.
Hmm.
However, rather not do that.
Of
So
course.
I guide the parents. I say, here's the rules. I, unless I instruct you to pull the baby's fingers out of their mouth or catch the toddler, um, do not look at them, look at me.
Hmm.
If you're looking at them to see if they're being bad, I say this a lot. If I feel comfortable, then you're being bad. So then I can, if they do it, I can be like,
Hmm.
just keep looking at me. You love me. I'm, I'm the center of your attention right now. So yeah, that is the, I've only done reshoots twice of toddlers. One is when this Korean mom brought her mother and her aunts and her sister just to be there, even though I was only photographing the toddler.
Hmm.
I could not get anything
Hmm.
because this child loves all those other people more than me.
Yeah.
So I had her come back, just her and the baby, and it went beautifully well.
Oh, good, good, good.
The other one where I offered an additional session and did it not in the studio because I knew then I could get the mom to be a little farther away was where the mom would not do what I needed because she's the mom, she knows best.
Hmm.
And so where she could not surrender leadership to me. And as an orchestra conductor of 50 muscles in every face, I need I need to be the leader.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh man, that all right there, that past 10 minutes or so was just fantastic tips that I know that a lot of people listening who like to
Good.
photograph children are going to take and implement that themselves. And if they don't implement it, then that's on them because that was just pure gold. That was
Thank
pure
you.
gold right there. Yeah.
Thank you.
But
And
I
they
kind of
can
want
call me.
to, yeah, they will. I want to go back because you talked about something interesting there, which was, no, this was a few minutes ago, which was talking about, revealing all the photos in person, right?
Yes.
Doing that so that you knew what it was that your clients actually wanted and what it was that they, as you said, put their dollars down for. And when we met at imaging, you had told me that by simply being there with my clients when I reveal my work would essentially double my income.
Yes.
Can you tell me more about how and why that is?
You are listening to the free version of the Beginner Photography Podcast, where each week you learn how world-class photographers see and capture the world around them. If you want to hear the extended interview with their best business tips to learn how to make money with your camera, then become a premium member today by heading over to beginnerphotographypodcast.com and click the premium membership button to join now.
So yeah, again, thank you so much for sharing all that insight. For sure, I know that's going to help a lot of people. And if just one person decides to start doing IPS, then I know it was helpful. And that's something that I've been thinking about for a long time. I just have all those mental, you know, reasons why I can't do it or
Well,
won't do it. But
yeah. Okay. So if you could work for half as many clients and
mhm.
make 3 times as much,
Oh man,
would
that
you
sounds fantastic.
would you get over those?
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah. Anybody who says no is a liar, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, So I want to talk about the photographers right now who are listening because oftentimes this whole thing ties into this, which is that oftentimes new photographers don't have the gear or the resources that most professional photographers do. Um, the theme of this year for the podcast is make do. Make
Okay.
more, do more, and just make do with what you got because it's better than you probably realize. Can
Right.
you tell me about a time where maybe you had to make do with what you had to get something to work?
So I've always been a minimalist and had just what was necessary.
Hmm.
Now, it's necessary to have backups. They don't have to be the best in the world or as good as your main equipment, but if all things fall apart, you got to have um, it. You can't be like, oh, too bad my camera broke. Sorry
Yeah.
about your wedding, or you know. any of the above. It doesn't look good. Um, in the studio, like I don't spend money unless I know I can make that back.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Unless it's a pure toy that I know is a treat. Um, you know, I don't know, a camera or a point and shoot or something that I know is going to be for fun, like upgrading to the newest iPhone. Uh, I wanted those 3 lenses. That was a
Yeah.
treat. But yes, I always, when I go to trade shows, it's like, how quickly can I recover that?
Mm-hmm.
So uh, I did, I do a lot of shopping for children's furniture at secondhand stores
Mm-hmm.
or antique stores that might also have some things that are not expensive. So I don't just buy the newest, latest, greatest. I also will buy gently used, certified equipment if I need a new lens or something like that. Didn't those Vivitar 285s were like $85 when the fancy one that went with my camera was 300.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's just a mindset of I want the money in my pocket more than fancy equipment. That being said, I will never make do with a PC anymore because
Too many bad
I
ones, huh?
I need it. Well, no, because I just didn't ever. I just was never comfortable with the um, I don't know, the whole. It just doesn't think like I do. I think
Okay.
like a Mac.
Yeah.
Does that
Oh,
make
I see.
sense?
I see. Yeah. 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 Yes. As somebody who switched in high school, I completely understand what it is that you're talking about for sure. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you.
So,
Thank you
but
for
there
sharing that.
used to be like I used to put uh, black stocking material or netting over the lens. Like
Hmm.
there used to be more DIY
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
tricks and things.
To get an image that you wanted.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. That's so
I'm
cool. Yeah.
also time is money, so if something's going to take a lot of time to create, I rather go buy the thing
Hmm.
because I don't like yippee. I get to if I'm going to be crafty, it's going to be for something artsy.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. I like that. Okay.
Yeah.
So as somebody who's been photographing children for so long, I'm sure that when you meet somebody and you tell them, I photograph children, or you were to tell them that I photograph children, I'm sure that one of the questions that you probably get asked the most is what's one thing that I can do to take better pictures of my kids?
Hmm. Have somebody else do it. No. So put them in good light.
Hmm.
Figure out like uh, you got windows in your home. Think of those as soft boxes, and see like if you turn your back to a window and have them face the camera,
Hmm.
you're going to get nice light.
Yeah.
I do this when I'm training about this topic. I i have people photograph the where would Lucy sit assignment, um, and to imagine that there's a round table and Lucy's going out to dinner and she's going to pick where she sits, and there's a big window. Where would she sit? So it depends. If I'm on a date and I want to look really cute, then I face the window
Hmm.
because I'm going to get that really nice direct light.
Hmm.
If I'm on a date with a friend, I want to look I want them to look great so that I can enjoy their beauty. So
Hmm.
I sit with my back to the window. If I'm with a photographer friend, we probably both sit sideways to the window so that we both have Rembrandt lighting.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
I love that little exercise. That's so good because immediately in your head you can visualize what it would look like, no matter where it is that
Right.
you sit. Oh,
Right.
that's great. That's great.
And also, um, the word smile, I think, I wish nobody ever told kids to smile because a real smile comes from the involuntary muscles around our eyes
Mhm.
and that pull up the corners of our mouth. we cannot, unless we're models and well trained. Like I can do it, let's see. Okay, I need a minute. No, see, I'm still like fake.
Mm-hmm.
In the right mood, I can create a natural smile because I do something to warm my emotions, and then it comes out through the eyes. Does that make sense?
It
So
does. So how do we translate that to kids?
when you say smile, they go like this.
Right.
There's no response. When I'm like, hey, are you married? Do you have a boyfriend? Or sing them a song or whisper something really quiet. They react emotionally. And then I would have, it's a good thing I didn't ever have to do this, but I would have been a good sharpshooter
Mm-hmm.
because I'm good at that anticipation of something and clicking right when the authenticity is revealed.
Yeah.
I've been to workshops where the photographer is teaching, and I'll watch and I'll see the moment, and then they click the moment after for me, for my, for what I'm looking for.
Of course.
So developing that quick draw and that ability to evoke emotions and then recognize when they happen, that's the magic.
Mm-hmm.
The word smile, when we go like that, that is considered threatening as people.
I see
That's
that.
how we read it.
Yeah.
Because it's artificial. Whereas a natural expression, whether the teeth are showing or not, whether it's a smile or not, as humans, we are highly trained, as from before we're born, to recognize what all the responses, those 50 muscles, when they move, when we think
Mm-hmm.
and feel, we are, it's in our DNA to recognize what it means, to be able to translate feelings.
So evoke that emotion rather than just say
Smile.
smile.
Yes. Now, okay, I'm going to give you my 2 magic tricks. Are you ready?
Oh, of course. Yes.
Since and this is fun because, like I said, other podcasts I've been on, we've talked a lot about business. So I love to also teach this other side. Okay, there's 2 words that work really great for me, especially if there's a group. So I'm farther away. One is the word yes. So everyone's posed, and I'm ready. I've got everything, all the little details, and then I say, okay, now I want you to. I'll say yes and hold the s, and yes makes you feel something. Mm-hmm. So if people say yes, if you look at my face, yes, this engaged. After a while, and also having everybody take, let's all take a nice deep breath. That gets the energy going. And then when yes doesn't work anymore and the breathing doesn't, then the word monkey.
Monkey.
See, if someone like freezes right there,
Yeah.
I've gotten 7 different possible expressions from you, Raymond. And if it doesn't capture, like most people, okay, will, it'll liven them up. And then if it hasn't worked all the way with somebody, then I start making monkey noises. Mm-hmm. And then that, and then that does it. See, look, click, 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 click,
Yeah.
click, click. I just got your pose right there. That was perfect.
That's great. I'm just trying to imagine myself at a wedding trying to sound like a monkey. How great that would be.
Yeah.
But it's funny that whole yes thing. Where I thought you were going with this is one thing that I do at weddings is sometimes like, everybody's kind of getting into that position, especially when it comes to those family formals and stuff.
Yeah.
I can see that everybody's just kind of stiff, and I will just instinctively, even though the photo isn't perfect, I will just start saying yes, yes, like this is good, yes, and then everybody's like, oh, we're good, right. Oh, okay, and then that kind of loosens them up a little bit more.
So we're on track with that.
Well, yeah, but your way I think is a little bit better, because that gets them more involved. I'm gonna try that next time as well.
Even if just saying the word yes, like cheese, is not a smile word. Cheese, but yes makes the corners go up even if you're not feeling it.
Yeah. I love it.
And some people say money because that'll make people smile, but the actual word money
Kind of
doesn't
goes
make your
down.
face look good.
Yeah.
And they'll say sex, and you know,
Still kind of goes more sideways.
sex. Well, it's like thinking about it, but I don't like to offend,
Hmm.
and so maybe with some groomsmen, you might say that once or twice, but I just discovered the word yes. And then monkey was a recent addition, probably in the last 10 years.
I love that. That's great. That's great.
Um, and some other tricks, um, whispering when you're
Hmm.
working with kids, or this one was, it's like safe cracking, especially with kids. What is going to get this one to respond?
Hmm.
And I was having some challenges with kids and parents, like getting out of pose or moving their hands or moving their heads or something. So I started singing the alphabet song. As I sang it, I would tell them what to do if they weren't doing what I want. So, like A, B, C, Raymond, sit up straight.
Oh,
X, I, D, put your hand down, Charlie. And
gotcha.
worked. It worked. I was
Gets
like,
him to pay
I'm
attention.
a genius. Because it was a hard session. I remember specifically when I discovered that. And then whispering. Um, oh, okay. So I'm going to give you one last like gold. You ready?
I love gold. Yes.
Gold. So parents love pictures where kids are looking deeply in a way that, um, like you just feel like you see their soul.
Hmm.
Okay. So on a close up of a child, I will say, can you see my eye through this lens? Can you see me winking at you? What color are my eyes? And they'll just start leaning in. Yeah, I mean, here's my camera.
Yeah.
So they'll just start like, and click, you get a great
Yeah.
expression.
Yeah. That's a great way to make them look right down the barrel of that camera
Yes. And
without being
then,
too over the top.
right. And then another winner, that my average sale is 3 to 8 wall portraits.
Hmm.
And part of the secret to that is variety, as well as things that I know people will love. So when I put a child on the ground looking up at me, and so their face fills the frame pretty much, those are winners.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially if, let's say, it's late in the day, the sun's gone down, everything's kind of dull. If you put them low and they're looking up, there's a beautiful light source above your head
Hmm.
that is not a good light source straight on because it's coming from the top and that makes shadows in the eyes. But if you're up and they're down, then they're looking up at the sky and the light is so beautiful, and that positioning is how parents see their children over and over and over again, and it's a beautiful angle.
Yeah. I'm gonna go out there right now and take Parker and get that shot. Try to get her
Yeah,
to
put him in
look at my
open.
eyes.
Yeah, and then put her in open shade,
Uh-huh. Well, it's
looking up
very
at
cold
you.
outside. We're below freezing, so I think I'm gonna stay inside today. But next time we go outside, I'm
Okay,
definitely gonna
so
try that.
if you're inside, yeah, but still try the where she's looking up at you,
Hmm.
and then the other, put your back to the window,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and and have her see if she can see in it. So one other tip I see, all the time, people are like, oh, I love my 85 millimeter lens, or I love my 70 to 200.
Hmm.
The challenge with that, besides that you can't get as much variety of composition, so there's not as much to sell because you have to be tight,
Yes.
right? It's not. But the other thing is you have to be farther away. And
Hmm.
with children, being closer, like with my Hasselblad, in uh, most photographers were using the 150 lens as their standard, and I use the 120 that has a little bit of a macro feature.
Hmm.
The other problem with the 70 to 200 is the focus length is about 3 feet, 2.5 feet away.
Oh yeah, good distance.
So you can't shoot down on kids
Yeah.
because it won't be in focus. So my favorite lens is a 24 to 105 f4
Mm-hmm.
because I can get a portrait focal length in the 100. I can do some wide and have, people small and lots of scenery. And then I can do that mid range as well. And it's a really nice sharp lens. And I've sold thousands of wall portraits. To me, sharpness and variety trumps bokeh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Unless you're simply doing single children, um, you know, 3/4 or fairly small, and a day-to-day lens. I also don't like changing lenses
Mm-hmm.
because that's when dirt and dust gets in your lens. It's every
Yeah.
time you change.
And
But
that
then I
24 to
also,
105 is a good variety right there.
yes, I always have my 70 to 200 in my other camera body. So that, let's say there's a crowd and then little Sally is doing something really cute holding on to daddy, then I can grab that. I can zoom, I leave my tripod and I zoom in and I can get this really tender moment that's happening within the bigger group.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so then I have the full range.
This was you promised one gold nugget, but this was a whole bag of gold right
I
here
love
is
it.
what that
Thank
was.
you.
Yeah. So, Lucy, I want to thank you so much for coming on,
You're welcome.
and sharing everything that you did. Before I let you go, can you let the listeners know where they can find out more about you and follow you online?
Luci Dumas Coaching is a great place to connect. Send me contact info there. There's also a couple little gifts. If you go there, you'll see an ebook, and then you'll also see another tab that has 7 tips for getting ideal clients. I also have a podcast, Lucy, the Profitable Photographer, and the website you can find also on Luci Dumas Coaching, or the Profitable Photographer podcast.com. I would like to offer 10 of your listeners an opportunity for a strategy session. We do a deep dive into your goals and dreams. We take a look at some challenges, and you walk away with a lot of clarity about where you want to go. So there'll be a link for setting up a quick call to apply for one of those 10 in the show notes, or you can also message me, email me at Lucy with an I at lucidumas.com. I have a Facebook page called the Profitable Photographer page, and then a private group I'd love you to join called the Profitable Photographer. So that's a whole bunch of ways to connect, and I would absolutely love to support your listeners in whatever way I can.
Oh wow, yeah, thank you so much. That's obviously not only a huge time commitment, but a very very valuable gift that you just gave to the listeners. So I
Yeah,
will
it's a
of course.
$400, usually a $400 session.
Wow.
So
Should
yeah,
definitely take you up on that for sure. Like I
that's
said,
right.
I'm going to put that in the show notes so that
Good.
anybody can find it and then go ahead and sign up. But again, Lucy, I just have to say thank you so much for coming on, sharing everything that you did. It was a
Thank you, Raymond.
pleasure to reconnect with you, and I look forward to chatting with you in the future.
Same here.
My biggest takeaway from this episode was just the amount of care that Lucy gives to her, to her subjects that she's photographing. She doesn't look at herself as somebody who's taking a photo. She looks at herself as somebody who is trying to help them achieve what it is that they want, right? And that is a huge difference. Being that person whose job it is to do nothing but help instead of, just trying to take photos and make money. So from helping your clients look their best, just for the shoot, to finding the right print for their home, A to Z, she knows that it's more than just taking photos. And it was just great to hear. Essentially, it's all the same thing that, we've heard. Photography is a service. When it comes to a service, you want to be helpful. But the way that Lucy broke it down today was just great and made it so simple. So Lucy, if you are listening, once again, thank you so much for being so open. I really appreciate it. And I know that the listeners do too. So that is it. Remember that enrollment for Lightroom 101 closes Thursday, March 5th at midnight. So go ahead and click that link in the show notes to learn all about the program and the $632 worth of bonuses that are included. You're going to love them. So that is it for this week. Until next week, I want you to make do. I want you to make more. I want you to do more. And I want you to make do with the gear that you got, because I promise you, it is better than you think. All right. Talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Beginner Photography Podcast. If you enjoy the show, consider leaving a review in iTunes. Keep shooting, and we'll see you next week.